Hi, it's been a minute. This is going to be a really serious video. I have notes sitting in front of me for what I'm going to be talking about for this video because there's a bit of a story that I have to tell, but this is going to be a very serious video. So up the top of this, trigger warning for depression, anxiety, suicide, and a general discussion of sexuality. So with that, let's talk about what the last 7 months of my life has been. So we start in December of 2023, and it was very clear early on that I was going to be defining that month. First of all, by releasing Vengeful Spirit, which was really gratifying, but also the fact that I started having panic attacks suddenly. In fact, actually, the week that Vengeful Spirit came out, I had a string of 5, which averaged out roughly to 1 a day every single day for 5 days straight. 2 of which happened the day that Vengeful Spirit came out. And I have never in my life up until that point had a panic attack of that severity. And I haven't really ever had panic attacks. I actually don't really have that problem. So it was this very sudden, like, now I have the sensation of I can't breathe, and in my head, clearly something is wrong. And little did I know that those panic attacks would end up defining the entirety of 2024 so far. But I had the help of many of my friends around me, my family as well, obviously, mostly my online friends. If you've actually watched my live streams, then you know who pretty much all of the characters who have been helping me through a lot of my emotional stuff are. And actually those friends also helped me come to terms with being gay, which was initially the sparking point for me having these panic attacks, was just the fact that, like, I'm gay and I wasn't fully okay with that yet. It took a lot for me to get past that, and I thought I was okay with the fact that I was gay. Like, I deliberately make it not a character trait about me. Like, it's not something that I talk about all the time. I mention it as a footnote in most conversations, which I believe to have caused more problems than it solved. And that was when I bought the pride flag that I used to hang on my wall for the first 4 videos at the start of this year. And now, I have been told by many of my friends that I probably shouldn't have taken down that flag, and from a certain perspective I agree, but also my channel is apolitical. It's specifically built upon this pillar of this is an escape from the real world back to a time probably in your childhood where you don't have to feel weighed down by the modern world that we live in. Putting the pride flag up made it clear what I sided with. And for some of you watching, I understand where your complaints came from. I totally understand that. Where I was coming from at the time was that was put up not as a political statement or anything. That was put up literally just so that I could say to myself, I'm gay and that's okay. But it ultimately ended up causing me more panic attacks, which I would have several over the coming months. They would eventually die down a little bit through most of March and then most of April. I actually only recall ever having 1 panic attack in March, which was the day before my birthday. I'm not going to divulge too much about that, but it ended up getting resolved pretty quickly, and the rest of March was fine. Then April, I made a choice. I actually straight up cannot divulge much about the situation. There's no serious drama about, like, anything that's happening here. This is a situation between me and one singular person. I can't divulge much. It's not a big deal. I just can't divulge much about it because it is still an active and ongoing situation, and it's mostly my fault, actually, and it's something that I'm working to fix. But I made a choice that sent me down the worst depression spiral I've ever had in my life. Ever. My panic attacks began to come back, and they even got a lot worse right at the end of April. And my mental health, like, I didn't know it yet, And I was hoping I would just be able to push through it, but I didn't realize just how much my mental health was going to decline. It's been over 3 months since I made this choice, and it's still going. It is still going. And actually being in a panic attack kind of is what inspired me to make this video, because I want to be candid. I want to be completely honest with what's going on and why you've not seen anything from me in a couple months. And the point at which I knew it was going to become a serious problem was when on May the 10th, I had my first inkling of suicidal ideation. It wasn't super serious. It was just a little flash of my brain trying to come up with this situation where I'm not going to get too in depth as to what it was that I was imagining, but just killing myself. And the point at which I knew it was wrong was when my brain went, you know what, that's probably not a bad idea. And it was after that I immediately started looking into therapy treatments. I started at the very end of May. The treatment that I'm doing is called TMS. I say I started at the very end of May. There was a little trial period I had to go through first, but I started with this company that does TMS treatments at the very end of May, and I was immediately put onto some medications, which I was a bit opposed to at first. I have a bad history when it comes to antidepressants and medications. A lot of my closest friends kind of know the story as to kind of what happened with that, and maybe I'll share that on my own time at some point, but now is not the time for me to tell that story. But I have a bad history when it comes to antidepressants, so I was a bit hesitant at first. The first medication didn't really work. In fact, it actually caused me to get worse, and I stopped taking it like less than a week after I started it. So I was left without medications for an entire month, because that's when the next follow-up was, because they do have to do this trial period before they can actually put me on the TMS, and my insurance sucks. Thanks, U.S. healthcare system, I appreciate it. June 19th was the first day where I was within actual minutes of killing myself. I managed to get stopped by one of my friends. I was on call with them and one of their friends as well. I immediately started, I had a panic, I started having a panic attack before I joined the call. I joined it thinking it would go away. It didn't. So I left, and I was just laying in bed, and I was within probably 3 or 5 minutes of getting up and actually acting something out. And he sent me one message that stopped me, and it was a picture. It was a GIF of it was a GIF, just basically like sending virtual hugs because you deserve it. Basically, I'll probably put it up on screen if I decide I want to. I don't know what it was, but something about them sending me that stopped me. And I just laid in bed and I just kind of fell asleep for a few hours. I think it was probably like an hour or two. And so I knew that I really needed this therapy to happen. And this happened, I think I said it was June 19th. This was just over a week before my next appointment. And that next week I was prescribed another medication, which at first seemed like it was doing well, because the first day that I took it, I woke up feeling pretty good, and the entire week went quite well. But the next week is when things go wrong, and then we get to July the 7th through the 11th, and this is a big statement to be making if you know me well enough. That is a big statement. This is a big statement to be making. That is the worst week of my life, by far. July 7th, I start having a panic attack before I go to bed. I take an anti-anxiety medication, which has actually been working quite well. I take it before I go to bed. I wake up, I'm still having a panic attack, but I still have to go to work at that point. I end up deciding not to. I take the day off. Try to kind of calm it down, do things to distract myself. It works for a little while, but the panic attack just ends up coming back. And I went to bed that night crying, which I've not done ever. And then that night I had a nightmare. Now, when I say a nightmare, you probably imagine like this very like surreal thing. It's like a bad horror movie that when you wake up you realize, what, that makes no sense at all. That's not how my dreams work. My dreams are super vivid. and super realistic. They are perfectly plausible. So I'm having this nightmare that all my real life friends abandoned me, and then all of my online friends abandoned me. And something I've not mentioned up to this point actually is that a lot of this as well was happening because I have this crippling sense of loneliness. I've had this crippling sense of loneliness for the past 3-ish months. I believe that this nightmare was a symptom of that. And it was enough to the point that I woke up from that nightmare also crying. But I didn't want to take more time off work than I had to, so I had to go to work. Cue the worst 8 hours I would ever have to endure. Yeah, July 9th, if I were to nail down a specific day during July 7th through the 11th, if there was one day that I would consider to be the worst, it was July 9th. It was that Tuesday. I'm pretty out of it for most of the day just because of that nightmare, and I'm really not in an emotionally stable position. I can't remember specifically what it was, and if I even were to remember, I probably actually wouldn't want to divulge what it was specifically. I have this, something triggers this. I go into another panic attack, and on my phone, I write a suicide note. Start to, I will make it clear. And I had full intent to finish it and act out on it later that week if things got worse. I then get up, and I'm already in this really emotionally heightened state where I'm having a panic attack, and I'm also thinking about this, like, genuinely like I was going to kill myself. So I go to the bathrooms at work and I cry again, which, like, this is probably the most I've cried in a span of 24 hours ever. Once I leave the bathrooms, it's a little while later, but I ask to go home, which I'm allowed to go home, thankfully. And I thought that would be the end of it, but it wasn't. A bunch of my friends were on a call for a Minecraft SMP that I'm a part of that I've not played in a while. I probably should. And I decide I'm gonna join this, see if that cheers me up. I was pretty quiet, I was pretty reserved, I wasn't really saying anything. Someone in the call, actually one of my best friends in the call, says something that kind of gets under my skin. I honestly do not remember what it was. I was so out of it that I don't remember what it was that he said, and I also don't remember exactly what it was that I said. But the response to it was very awkward, and I didn't even realize anything was wrong until they messaged me after the fact and were like, "Hey, are you okay? Do you, like, I think you need to stop taking that medication, because that's what medication does to me. I get super irritable. It's very easy to piss me off when I'm on antidepressants, and it doesn't matter what kind of antidepressants, as I've learned." My friend tells me that I was a bit passive-aggressive to him. Now, that doesn't sound especially bad, but to me that was crushing, because at that point I was already in this really unstable headspace, and my brain took that as meaning you have ruined our friendship, and this is someone who I hold in very high regard. I eventually leave that call, and I go upstairs after leaving the call, and I just lay in bed, and for the 4th time in that span of 24 hours, I just cry again. I end up crying myself to sleep for about 45 to 90 minutes, and I wake up again, and I'm, like, still really dazed, really out of it. And I knew at that point, like, it needed to stop. Everything needed to stop. Like, there were several points over the previous couple months where I knew that I needed to put a stop to this, but it was happening so slowly that I was getting desperate, and I really, really needed it to stop, and I really needed everything to go away. The next morning, I wake up and I'm in this really, really bad headspace. I'm definitely not in a position to text my bosses because I wouldn't even know what to say. So I have my mom do it. She's been wonderfully helpful for me throughout this entire ordeal. So she texts my boss, and I get the rest of the week squared away as time off just because I needed to get myself into the right headspace. I don't really remember much of what happened over the next couple days, but I remember things started to get better on the 11th, on that Thursday. I had been sulking kind of a lot in bed, I will admit. But I did end up finish writing that suicide note with full intention to act out on it that day. And I say that like it's not a big deal. I'm well aware of how big a deal it is. I know what I'm saying when I'm saying that. But at that point, I was so accustomed to living in that headspace and being so depressed that nothing felt like it mattered anymore, that even looking back, I can't think about it other than flippantly. I finished writing that suicide note. I had the intention to act out on it later that day, but I see my friends are on call again playing that SMP, and so I decide to join to try and distract myself. And again, I'm very quiet and reserved in that call, and I just kind of go off and do my own thing. And they try to include me. They check in to make sure that I'm okay as I'm playing. And then one of the people in that call, the friend who I mentioned before, asks me how I'm doing, because they know that I'm not in a good headspace. And they also ask if the call was helping very much, which in fairness it was, but I don't want to tell him much of what's going on over the call. I don't want to bring down the mood, so I privately message him and tell him about the suicide note and everything. And I could tell he had read it when on the call he just goes, "Oh, fuck." And he mutes himself and frantically starts messaging me. Here's the thing, I don't think he even knows that I had full intention to act out on it that day. But he starts frantically messaging me, talking me down, and like, I definitely still needed the talking down because I wasn't fully stable at that point. So he did still help me. I was on the brink of actually acting out on that if I had left that call without this conversation that he and I had. But he did ultimately save my life. Several times, actually. It was as I was done being on that call that I got a text from one of my real-life friends, just out of the blue saying, "Hey, come to my house, let's hang out." And I knew that meant it's a global friend get-together, as it were. And so I just go, "Sick, remind me your address." And I knew I was going to that, and I knew it was a good idea for me to go. And it was, because that was like living in that headspace, feeling like you're super lonely and you have no one is not healthy. So having that real life friend of mine message me saying, "Hey, let's hang out. Come to my house. A bunch of other people will be there." It was nice. And I deleted that suicide note, by the way. I don't have any documentation of it anymore. I guess there is the documentation I have in DMs, because that friend of mine I mentioned before, he did ask to see it. But I have no intentions of ever actually using it at this point. I get to this headspace of like, okay, now I need to explain to my bosses what's going on. And thankfully, if you're gonna be going into this next part of the story assuming that it's going to be like big corporation, "No, you're a worker robot, we need you to be here at the same time as you've said every single day," they're not like that. The company that I work for is very, very, very understanding when it comes to this kind of stuff, and they've been wonderfully helpful with making sure that I'm okay, and they've been understanding with what's going on. The first thing was I talked to my boss, my direct boss, and just kind of explained to him what's going on, and he's perfectly understanding and is willing to help me and kind of knows where I'm coming from. So it was relaxing at that point starting out. And then I go to the overall supervisor of my department. The absolutely instant willingness to help me from the department supervisor was something I never thought I would experience. He was immediately on my side and understanding and willing to help me so that I didn't have to stress about my job security. He immediately sent off emails to HR, and he then explained to me a couple days later that they're going to be putting me onto FMLA, which, if you don't know what that means, anyway, I think it's specifically a United States law. And basically what it means is it's the Family and Medical Leave Act, which is something that allows people who are having family things, like a family member's passed away or something like that, or is going through major surgery. This allows them up to 12 weeks unpaid by the government of time off. The reason I specify, by the way, that it's unpaid by the government is because that different companies will have different policies. I don't know what it's like for the company that I work for just yet, but it looks like it might be paid by them. I'm not sure yet. I am so relieved to hear this, because basically what FMLA means for me is that I'm going to put it as honestly as I can. I can take as much time as I need when it comes to all this mental health stuff I'm going through, and I don't lose my job because of it. That sounds like something that's very easy to take advantage of, and I'm well aware of this fact. And that's why I'm trying my absolute damnedest not to take advantage of it. The day that I'm recording this, I did end up taking off because, again, I'm not stable yet. Suffice it to say, that was the last little bit of security that I needed, and thankfully they have been very understanding when it comes to me having to take time off just because of mental health stuff. The way that I put it is that if I wake up feeling like it's a good idea to jump into a vat of acid, I probably need a little bit more time to myself. And then I suppose on the last major, this is the last thing I need to talk about here, is that it took a couple months, but I finally started TMS. And TMS, I don't remember the specific, I don't remember what the acronym means. It's transcranial magnetic stimulation, I think it is. And basically what it is using magnets to, and magic, to adjust the way that your brain is firing neurons and to help with depressive symptoms and stuff like that. I don't fully understand it. I suggest looking it up yourself. There's plenty of resources to dig into when it comes to TMS, but it has a very, very high success rate on people who've tried it. So it's definitely not a pseudoscience, and it's backed by actual real medical data. So I was more than willing to try it, and thankfully it has been effective. I started on Monday of this week, so it's been very, very effective for the most part. I'm not fully stable yet, but there is a light. I mean, obviously, me taking time off from work, evidently it's not actually working effectively completely yet. We're trying to get there, and that's kind of the main thing that I want to get across here, is that I'm on the right path. And that ultimately brings us to today, where I'm here sitting in front of you making this video. I had a lot of things that I had planned to do for this year that ended up falling through. A couple of different collaboration projects, and actually a collaboration project I'm probably going to end up having to rush to get out for this month, but if it doesn't come out this month, it'll come out sometime, hopefully early next month. Now, one thing I've been worried about with telling this story, because there's obviously, I know Rob Scallon just did a video about this, but there's this stigma around mental health and mental health problems that people have. I don't want to use my platform here, the small platform that I have, as a means for me to just complain about the emotional problems that I'm having. The problems that I'm having and that I have had are completely serious and legitimately did almost kill me several times. And I want there to be this seriousness and serious understanding of mental health is not something that people talk about with the intent to sound disingenuous. But more than anything, I want to use this video to just explain that you never know what someone's going through. Especially on YouTube. If you're a viewer watching someone's content, you never know what they're actually going through. I mean, look at my channel. You only get a small snippet into what my life is like on a daily basis. And that's just the music side. You don't get to see anything else. So you don't see whatever other pain and suffering and demons I'm fighting. Because of that, you also don't know necessarily what any other person in your life that you may know personally is going through. So use this video as a cautionary tale that your friends may not be okay. I'm not saying they aren't. Let me get that clear. I'm not saying they aren't okay. But if your friend seems kind of down or is just kind of not themselves in the way that you've known them, check in on them from time to time. Make sure that they know that there's someone who cares about them. I got lucky over the last 3 months. I got very lucky. I'm surrounded by people who care, and I'm working in a job environment that is more than happy to help me. But I got lucky. Your friends might not be. So if there's someone in your life you really, really care about, take the time to make sure that they know that you do. And so, on that note, hopefully we'll be back to lighter things fairly soon. There's a lot of stuff that's been going on over the last couple of months, but hopefully things will come back to normal soon. I got a big thing coming up soon as well, a big thing in just a couple months. So, with that, thank you for watching. See you in the skies, Dragonites. All the best, and take care. I can get through this. You can get through this.